viewers, my name is Finda Ayu Fadilla and I'm going to talk about the theme for our presentation. So we choose friendship as the theme and we have some reason for that. Though there is no age limitation, we are focusing on the reader target for children. Reading friendship-themed books give children various benefits. First, it can encourage them to develop social skills. Through the book, the children understand that there are different people and anyone can be a friend. Second one, it inspires children to solve problems in child's friendship. Children can learn from the way characters face a problem in several situations and apply them in real life. Children's books that contain friendship themes mainly talk about how to make new friends, adventurous stories with friends, and finish with happy endings. All of them wrap up in funny and interesting stories. Not just the picture and the stories that are entertaining for children, it also helps children to remember the value of friendship in the future.
Thank you, Finda. Now I will be taking over and speak about our theory for this analysis. We will be using Freud's psychoanalysis theory on defense mechanism, specifically repression, denial, projection, displacement, regression, and sublimation. We all know who Sigmund Freud is. He is the father of psychoanalysis, so I don't need to explain that further. But first, let me briefly explain what is defense mechanism. In psychoanalytic theory, a defense mechanism is an unconscious psychological operation that functions to protect a person from anxiety-producing thoughts and feelings related to internal conflicts and outer stressors. Defense mechanism may result in healthy or unhealthy consequences depending on the circumstances and frequency with which the mechanism is used. Or another way to say it is that a defense mechanism is used by the unconscious mind to manipulate, deny, or distort reality in order to defend against feeling of anxiety and unacceptable impulses and to maintain one's self-schema or other schemas. These psychological strategies may help people put distance between themselves and threats or unwanted feelings such as guilt or shame. Now let's talk about different types of defense mechanism that we will employ in this presentation. The first one will be repression. Repression is when a feeling is hidden and forced from the consciousness to the unconscious realm because it is seen as socially unacceptable. Denial. Denial involves blocking external events from awareness. If some situation is just too much to handle, the person just refuses to experience it. Projection. It's involved the individuals attributing their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and motives to another person. For example, you might hate someone, but your superego tells you that such hatred is unacceptable. You can solve the problem by believing that they hate you instead. Displacement. Satisfying an impulse with a substitute object. For example, someone who is frustrated by his or her boss at work may go home and kick the dog. Regression. This is a movement back in psychological time when one is faced with stress. An example that will be changing one mentality state into something that's much more younger than they are now. Sublimation. Satisfying an impulse with substitute object in a socially acceptable way, the opposite of displacement. That is all that I can say for this theory segment. Now I will pass the baton to Zitta.
Hi, I'm Zitta and I'm going to continue giving the first analysis on friendship and defense mechanisms in the first book of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The book revolves around how Greg Heffley navigates through the social hierarchy in middle school and deals with his family as a pubescent boy. Greg is almost an invisible figure in both his home and school. At home, his parents barely understand him and only pays attention to his little brother. His older brother, Roderick, often pulls a prank on him, whereas his younger brother, Manny, is a spoiled child. At school, Greg is an average Joe who barely stands out. As a result, Greg is constantly seeking ways to gain attention and control. This nature of Greg is reflected in the friendship dynamic between him and Rolly. Greg pulls all the pranks Roderick tricked him with on absent-minded Rolly. This act of displacement is Greg's own defense mechanism to dump all his annoyance of being the one who is always picked on by his brother. As his younger brother, Manny is untouchable because of how protective their parents are towards Manny. With Rowley, however, as his best friend is too dumb to not fall for these pranks, Greg can always get off scot-free. This dynamic is shown when Greg attempted to build his own haunted house with Rowley in Rowley's basement. Greg aims to make money off of curious kids, but this plan of his falls apart when one of the kids did not want to move, and this fast attracted the attention of Rowley's strict father. Rowley's dad, who has always been hostile towards Greg, demands explanation, but as a defense mechanism, Greg denies that he's scared of the kid and lied that the kid actually paid for them to do it to him to make him stay out of trouble. However, this did not work as Rowley ended up getting grounded. Rowley is often a subject towards such kind of treatment. He often follows whatever Greg is into without thinking twice, which ends up troubling him himself. One day, Greg sneakily brought Roderick's rock music CD to listen to at school, as he is not allowed to play rated medias at home. When he is about to listen it to Rowley, a teacher caught them and they got lectured about how evil rock music is. Afraid, Rowley started bawling and blabbering about how he does not want rock music to ruin him. This goes to show how under Greg's various stunts, Rowley often throws a childlike outburst as a regressive defense mechanism. As one of his attempts to garner attention at school, Greg often participates in a position where he could get control and fame. One example of this is signing up to be a safety patrol. However, Greg soon realizes that instead of being able to troll his schoolmates, the duty of safety patrol is to guard kindergarteners as they commute. But then he finds it to be a nice job as he gets free hot chocolate. However, Greg is soon deprived of that privilege as a result of him scaring off the kindergarteners while on duty. Greg started to resent Rowley because Rowley was the one who ratted him out and gets bigger privilege as a safety patrol. As a defense mechanism, he started to project that it was all Rowley's fault that he is getting reprimanded and become lonely while Rowley seems to be having fun with his safety patrol privileges and new friends, when in fact all of it is due to Greg's own carelessness. So that has been my analysis on friendship and Freud's defense mechanism in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and my friend Radevi will take over for the next analysis. Thank you.
The next one we have Good News Nelson by Judy Moore. Good News Nelson is a picture book that tells the story about a paper boy loved by everyone in town but Mrs. Notberry. The paper boy names Nelson. Every morning he always delivers newspaper from house to house. His neighbors always ask him, "What's the good news, Nelson?" except the old cranky woman, Mrs. Notberry. When Nelson delivers newspaper to her house and says good morning to her, she always says, "Bah, more bad news." She believes that people always do bad things and don't care about everything. But Nelson not. So Nelson gets an idea to help the town solve the problem of 100 abandoned kittens. Mrs. Notberry realizes that Nelson can make bad news into good news because he cares, so she decides to adopt one of cats become his friends. In this book, I use self-defense mechanism theory Sigmund Freud. So self-defense mechanism theory is divided into 6 parts, which are repressions, denial, projections, displacement, regressions, and sublimations. The first one we call repressions. Repression is unconscious mechanism employed by the ego to keep disturbing thoughts from becoming conscious. In the book, we can find that Nelson always believed that people care and there will be a good news every day in his newspaper. So when he knows the fact that Mrs. Notberry's negative thought about people, he immediately tries to prove her that people care with helping abandoned kittens finding their new home. The second one we get denial. Denial involves blocking external events from awareness. If some situation is just too much to handle, the person just refuses to experience it. In this book, we can find that every day, Mrs. Notberry always assumes that there is no good news in Nelson's newspaper. So when she reads the headlines about abandoned kittens, she chooses to believe that there is no people who cares anymore. And every day, there will be a bad news because of people's ignorance.
The third one we got projections. This involves individuals attributing their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and motives to another person. In this book, we can find that Mrs. Notberry hates good news because she's skeptical about people's behavior. So she also hates Nelson for always bringing newspaper to tell people some good news to her. The fourth one we got displacement. Displacement is satisfying an impulse with substitute object. In this book, we can find that Mrs. Notberry is a skeptic person because of incidents she had in the past. So in her old life, she begins to lose interest about headlines in newspaper because she assumes it always be a bad news. So she hates newspaper and also Nelson, the paper boy. The fifth one, we have regressions. This is a movement back in psychological time when one is faced with stress. In this book, we can find that Nelson faces his stress phase when he wants to rescue all 100 kittens to animal shelters. So she gets an idea to help animal shelter near his house to donate newspaper to line the gates and donate some cat foods. And the last one, we have sublimations. Sublimation is satisfying an impulse with substitute object in a socially acceptable way. In this book, we can find that Nelson collects newspaper and buys some cat foods because he wants to find new home for 100 kittens and prove Mrs. Notberry that there is still good people who cares. Thank you.
I will continue the presentation. For the last book to be discussed is The Shadow Elephant. One of the reasons why I choose this book is because the language of this book is easy to understand, but the message conveyed is quite deep. This book teaches us about what it takes to dispel our sadness and lighten our heaviest emotional burden. And for the summary, The Shadow Elephant is a picture book. The theme of this book is sadness and friendship between the elephant and the mouse. This book tells a subtle story about an elephant who feels sad and nothing seems to interest him or lift his spirits. Illustrated by stark contrast between shadow and light, the gloomy blue elephant seems to live in a different world from its colorful savanna friends. And then, one day, a small, out-of-breed mouse appeared from another life scale and asked if he could sit next to the elephant and rest for a while. This small request, a non-judgmental presence unafraid of this elephant's plight, became the gateway to his transformation. The elephant couldn't believe it at first that the rat wasn't there to distract him for his sorrow with some ruse. But then he begins to tell his own story, how he went into the savannah to find his brother's most prized possession, a golden key. How he walks all day only to get lost like the key. How he is now afraid that he will not find what he is looking for or his way home. Something about that rat's plight, about the ease with which he shared his sorrow, opened something up to the elephant. He began to cry big silent tears. Then he began to weep by the beautiful natural bond of sentient sympathy that binds us when we stop feeling separated and alone in our sorrow. And so for the analysis of this book, as Radevi said earlier, that the self-defense mechanism theory is divided into 6 parts, but in this book I found only 3 parts: is denial, projection, and regression. For denial, this book shows how an elephant who is no longer interested in activities that used to provide pleasure. For example, when a crocodile brings him a bowl full of acacia leaves, which was once a favorite food of elephants, but it's not success as well. The elephants remain sad. And the second one is projection. In this book, we see an elephant crossing the line between sadness, understanding, and emotional connection. In a story that unfolds at a natural and gentle pace, that it's okay to be sad and show it, and that this sadness isn't always a problem to be fixed, but a feeling to be acknowledged without judgment. The simple act of accepting and acknowledging another being feeling is subtle, but is an important step towards true empathy. And the last one is regression. In this book, we can see how an elephant deals with stress. This book shows that exchanging stories with the mouse and seeing the mouse cry, it opens something for the elephant and makes the elephant rise from its sadness.
So that was all the analysis from our group. Now I will continue to give a conclusion. First of all, our group took friendship as the theme for our analysis. For the theory, we use Sigmund Freud theory that talk about self-defense mechanism. We chose 3 books as the base of the analysis. For the first book, we have Diary of Wimpy Kid. Here, the friendship is shown by the relation between Greg and Ronnie, who are a good friend. Moreover, Greg built his own self-defense by pull-up pranks he used to get from his brother so he can dump all the annoyance feeling in himself. The second book is A Good News Nelson. When Mrs. Nutberry realized that Nelson can make a bad news into a good news by having an idea to help the town solve the problem of 100 abandoned kittens, she decided to adopt one kitten and make it as her friend. So, one of the most distinct friendship relation is shown by Mrs. Nutberry and her adopted kitten. Regarding to Sigmund Freud theory in this book, we could find many parts of self-defense mechanism which are repression, denial, projection, displacement, regression, and sublimation. The last book that we analyzed is a picture book titled The Shadow Elephant. The relation among the animals from savanna, the mouse, and the elephant itself really explain how friendship can cure our depression. In this book, self-defense mechanism can be found in 3 parts. There are denial, projection, and regression. So, I think that was our presentation of book analysis, The Diary of Wimpy Kid, Good News Nelson, and The Shadow Elephant. Hope this presentation could help us to open our mind that children's book is not as simple as it sounds, but there are a lot of elements and theory that we can analyze and pay attention in it. Lastly, we are sorry if there are any mistakes and lags. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.